Chapter 10, in which Kimmerine and Alienora conduct some tests and disturb a wizard. Back in the kitchen, Kimmerine and Alienora quickly determined that the fireproofing spell had indeed worked. First, Kimmerine, then Alienora, tossed a pinch of feverfew into the air and recited the spell verse, then put a hand into a candle flame and held it there. Don't try this at home. Neither was burned at all, though Alienora claimed that the candle tickled almost as much as the eagle feather had done. How long does the spell last? Alienora asked. I'm not sure exactly, Kimmerine said. At least an hour. But I'll have to do some tests to pin it down beyond that. I hope Kazul gets back soon. I want to see if it works with dragon fire. You're going to have Kazul breathe fire at you just to see if the spell works? Alienora said, horrified. What if it doesn't? Then I'll talk to Kazul. And we'll go see Morin, and the three of us will try to figure out what to change to make the spell work for dragon fire too. Don't look at me like that. I'm not going to stand in front of Kazul and have her breathe fire at me. I'll just stick out a finger, the way we did with the candle. That was not enough to convince Alienora, but Kimmerine was determined. The whole point of trying this spell was to make ourselves immune to dragon fire. If it doesn't work, I don't want to find out for the first time when one of Kazul's guests gets mad and breathes fire at me because he doesn't like the way I cooked his cherries jubilee. Alienora had to admit that this was a good point, but she was still disposed to argue. The discussion was cut short by Kazul's return. At first, the dragon was more inclined to agree with Alienora than with Kimmerine, but after Kimmerine proved her invulnerability to candle flames, light torches, and the fire she had built in the kitchen stove, Kazul agreed to the trial. She insisted, however, on working up to full firepower in gradual stages. Before they began, Kimmerine threw another pinch of feverfew into the air and recited the couplet again, just to be sure the spell wouldn't wear off in the middle of the test. Then Kazul lowered her head nearly to the ground, and Alienora watched nervously as Kimmerine lowered her hand slowly into various intensities of dragon flame. Finally, Kimmerine stood right in front of Kazul, while the dragon breathed her hottest. The spell worked perfectly every time. There, Kimmerine said. Now we know it works. Aren't you glad? I'm glad, Alienora said fervently, and I hope I never have to watch anything like that again as long as I live. I didn't dare blink for fear you'd go up and smoke while my eyes were closed. Why don't you try it yourself? Kimmerine said mischievously. No way, said Alienora and Kazul together. Watching you is bad enough, Alienora went on with a shudder. I believe it works. I don't see any reason for me to test it. Besides, I've done more than enough fire breathing for one day, Kazul added. I'm starting to get overheated. All right, if you don't want to, you don't have to, Kimmerine said. If we're all done, I'd better go tidy up. Alienora stayed to help Kimmerine finish cleaning up the traces of the spell, by which time she had calmed down considerably and was very nearly her usual self again. Kimmerine gave her a pouch full of dried feverfew before she left and made her recite the words that activated the spell several times to make sure she had it memorized. Remember, you only have to repeat the first half of the verse to get the spell going, now that it's been set up, Kimmerine said. Can you do it? It's only 2 lines and they rhyme, Alienora said, laughing. How could I forget that? My memory isn't that bad. Maybe not, but say it anyway, Kimmerine said. Alienora laughed again and did so. Kazul was somewhat out of temper, and Kimmerine thought privately that she had been telling the truth about getting overheated. Rather than annoy the dragon further, Kimmerine asked if she could read the book Kazul had borrowed from Morwen. It's in the treasure room, Kazul said. Read it there, and I hope you see something in it that we didn't. Kimmerine nodded, picked up her lamp, and hurried off before Kazul could change her mind. The book was lying near a pile of sapphires next to an ornate gold crown. She picked it up, went over to the table, which was large and very sturdy, because it was intended for counting piles of gold and silver coins. It was even drier and duller than Kazul had said. There were a great many perchances and wherefores strung together in long, involved sentences that compared the strange and wonderful things in the cave to obscure philosophical ideas and odd customs from places Kimmerine had never heard of. After a few pages, Kimmerine put the book down and went and got a quill pen, an ink pot, and some paper. She didn't want to have to read A Journey Through the Caves of Fires more than once. so she decided to write down important information. For the next 3 days, Cameron spent bits of her spare time in the treasure room, taking notes. It took her that long because she could never manage to read more than a little without getting so bored that she nearly fell asleep. Her persistence gained her several pages of notes about the caves, but nothing that seemed as if it might be of particular interest to wizards. Alienora came to see her a few days later, looking very cheerful. "It worked," she announced. As she came into the library where Camerine was going over her notes, "Caradwell's gone. Thranduil rescued her, just the way you said he would." "Good," Camerine said. "I'm glad something is going right." "What's the problem?" Alienora asked. "This," Camerine said, waving at the paper-covered table. "Kazul is sure that the key to what the wizards are after is somewhere in that dreaded book she borrowed from Morwen. I copied out everything that looked interesting, but none of it seems like anything a wizard would care about." "How do you know that?" Alienora asked curiously. "I don't," Camerine said. "I'm just guessing that's the problem." "Oh." Alienora picked up the sheet of paper nearest her. "What on earth does this mean?" Camerine looked at the page Alienora was holding. "Thus these caves of fire and night are, in some sense, indivisible, whereas the caves of chance are, by contrast, individual. Though it is preposterous to claim these descriptions are true of either group of caves in their entirety." That's one of the bits I copied word for word. The whole book is like that. I think it means that if you have a piece of something magical from the caves of fire and night, you can use it in a spell as if it were the whole thing. "I can see why you wouldn't be sure," Alienora said. "Do you think it would help you figure things out if you stopped for a while?" "I have stopped," Camerine pointed out. "Or did you have something more specific in mind?" "I'm almost out of feverfew," Alienora said. "I was hoping you'd come with me to pick some more out." "You're almost out?" Camerine looked surprised. "How did that happen?" Alienora shifted uncomfortably. "I've been working that fireproof spell every hour or so for the past 2 days. Rorog has been getting more and more unpredictable, and I don't feel comfortable otherwise. Halana was visiting yesterday when he came in the middle of the afternoon, and he was roaring and dripping little bits of flames when he breathed. She was terrified, and I don't blame her. If it weren't for the spell, I'd be scared to death. What's the matter with him? I don't know. He doesn't tell me anything about dragon politics or wizards or what he's been getting so worked up about. He's not like Kazul." Camerine frowned. "Maybe Kazul will have some idea what's bothering him. I'll ask her this evening. In the meantime, let's go get that feverfew. You're right to say that I could use a break." "Oh, good," said Alienora. "I've never picked herbs before, and I'm not sure what feverfew even looks like." "I don't know what I'd have done if you said you wouldn't come." Camerine put her notes away and got 2 wicker baskets and a small knife from one of the storage rooms. "Up or down?" Alienora asked as they left the cave. "Up," Camerine said. "The other way is the ledge I told you about, and I wouldn't be surprised if bits of it are still invisible." And that, my friends, is our homeschool book club edition for today. See you later, dollies.